This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
At the Associated Press's annual luncheon, one of the participants asked presidential candidate Barack Obama a question about Afghanistan.
The irony, though, is that the man who posed the question unintentionally referred to Osama bin Laden as Obama bin Laden.
You imagine shifting a substantial number to Afghanistan, where the Taliban has been gaining strength and Osama bin Laden is still at large?
I think that was Osama bin Laden.
If I did that, I'm so sorry.
No. This is part of the exercise that I've been going through over the last 15 months. Which is why it's pretty impressive I'm still standing here.
Another bloody day in Iraq. 3 booby-trapped vehicles exploded in Baquba, al-Ramadi, and Baghdad. Our reporter in Baghdad quoted security and medical Iraqi officials saying that the initial estimates put the death toll of the Baquba explosion at 40. More than 70 others were injured. The explosion was caused by a booby-trapped vehicle outside the Baquba court in the middle of the city, which is one of the largest cities in the Diyala province, northeastern Baghdad. Meanwhile, the Iraqi police announced that a suicide bomber wearing an explosive belt exploded himself in a local restaurant in western Ramadi, killing 13 and injuring 14 others. Arabiya reporter quoted Iraqi security officials saying that another booby-trapped vehicle exploded in Baghdad, killing 3 and injuring 7 others. The Iraqi defense minister visited Al-Qibla in Basra and port of Qasr after establishing control in them. He announced that the army continues its search operations for weapons and armed groups. These military operations are part of an ongoing security plan.
Iraqi security forces are still searching for heavy weapons and explosives in Al-Qibla and Basra, after they enforced their control over the entire area. The Iraqi Defense Minister Abdel Qadir Ubadi visited the region and met with residents to inquire about the situation.
بطلنا المدارس هيك الطوبه شلونكم وياها؟ يلعبون طاوله والله. رجعوا لنا هذا احمد، رجعوا لنا الميناء. لا اليوم ضاربينها على الخرز. لا هاي ما تكون.
The leader of the infantry forces, accompanied by the Minister of Transportation, visited Qasr port, where the situation has somewhat improved. However, corruption is still a problem.
Everyone pays different prices.
Some testify that government employees are stealing.
We will take all measures to prevent ill-minded people from doing business in the ports.
The people who are now working to secure the ports are new. They were not working here previously.
The Iraqi forces started implementing the second part of the security plan by searching ports and homes for weapons and wanted individuals. These search operations are being conducted at this very moment. Ali Khalif, Al Arabiya, Al Basra.
Many Palestinians were injured in an Israeli mortar attack at a home east of the Karara village near Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. This morning, the occupation forces carried out an incursion many meters inside the region. Yesterday evening, the leader of the National Resistance Brigades, the military wing of the Democratic Front, was martyred and 2 others were wounded in a raid carried out by Israeli spy planes in the Beit Lahia village in the northern strip.
Meanwhile, Israel announced its determination to resume supplying diesel fuel, which is used for electricity and cooking gas to the Gaza Strip, beginning tomorrow. The Israel Broadcast Agency stated that the Israeli Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, agreed to an Egyptian request on this matter. This does not include providing transportation fuel. Israel will supply 1.1 million liters of diesel fuel per week to the only power plant, which provides the Gaza Strip with 30% of its electricity.
Amidst all this, the Hamas movement has begun a sit-in on the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing with Egypt to demand an end to the imposed blockade on the Gaza Strip.
The strikers, with the participation of members of the Legislative Council, appealed to the international community and Arab governments to pressure Israel to end its siege. Near the sit-in, a symbolic grave was erected and dubbed the Grave of Arab Silence.
أمام بوابات قطاع غزة الجنوبية المغلقة.
In front of the closed gates of the southern Gaza Strip and under the effects of the suffocating blockade, citizens held a strike with the participation of many Hamas members of the Legislative Council. The strikers declared that they will remain in front of the Rafah crossing gates for 3 days to demand that they be opened and to demand an end to the siege.
Certainly there is nothing like this suffocating, killing, and tight blockade. The entire people have been subjected to a slow death. Of course, pressure will only lead to an explosion. Volcanoes are usually preceded by the earth fracturing. In the face of this, if the starving and besieged Palestinians decide to take action, their course of action will not be directed towards a specific target. It will be all over the place. Thus, all sides must take responsibility before the time runs out.
The main demand of the strikers, who condemned Arab silence, the blockade on Gaza, and the suffering of its people, was to call on Egypt to ease the suffering of the residents of the Gaza Strip. The blockade on the residents of the Strip gets tighter day after day. Israel has not responded to international and regional appeals for it to consider the deteriorating humanitarian conditions.
O world, O Arabs, O leaders, governments and organizations, today you are here, but tomorrow you will meet your God. What will you say to God? What will the people say? That I participated in the blockade. O Arab nations, you all have a role.
Today, the blockade, which has stopped or threatened to stop many aspects of life in Gaza, has paralyzed university education. Transportation lines will also soon stop as a direct effect of Israel's decision to prohibit supplying this sector with fuel.
With the shortage of fuel, there will be no way to transport most of the students, or even most of the professors and administrators to the universities. We noticed that in the past few days, the number of students attending went down from 60% to 50 to 40%, and yesterday to 30%. So we had to shut down the educational institutions and figure out another way.
Every time the voices calling for easing the siege on the Gaza Strip rise, Israel determines to tighten its siege until what is left of the necessities of life for the Gaza residents are either completely depleted or at least threatened to be cut off. Hiba Akila, Al Jazeera, in front of the closed Rafah border crossing.
In Ramallah, he laid a wreath on the grave of Yasser Arafat before heading to Damascus to meet with the head of the Hamas political office, Khalid Mishal. This is the highlight of today's visit by the former U.S. President, Jimmy Carter, to the Palestinian territories. Carter's visit stirred a wave of indignation inside Israel, which said it will not provide security to the former president should he meet with Mishal. From Ramallah, Mohammed Al-Sayed.
Coming from Israel, where his visit has stirred a wave of indignation, the former U.S. President Jimmy Carter arrived at the capital of the Palestinian Authority, Ramallah, where he laid a wreath on the grave of the late Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. Despite all the noise they made, the Israelis have failed to convince Carter to cancel the meeting with the head of Hamas's political office, Khalid Mish'al, and the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Perhaps it's a U.S. tradition that makes the head of the political pyramid in Washington become the holder of the peace torch after leaving the White House. However, in Carter's case, the formula is different, considering the man's political history. Carter has brokered peace between the Israelis and the Egyptians, and also between the Israelis and the Palestinians. While some refer to these efforts as peace accords, others consider them an Arab defeat.
I will try to do my best to push toward a peace agreement with the Israelis and the same between Fatah and Hamas. However, I'm not a negotiator. I'm someone who might provide some communication, and I will meet with Mishal and the Syrian president.
Carter's political steps started from Washington and ended in Tel Aviv, where his announcement about Hamas has stirred anger and condemnation. Carter said that isolating Hamas is counterproductive, and also repeated that his mission is personal and impartial and has nothing to do with the current or upcoming U.S. administration. On one side, Carter criticized the cross-border rocket attacks from Gaza and met with the family of the kidnapped Israeli soldier. On the other side, he criticized the Israeli aggression against the Palestinians.
The intervention of President Carter at this time and his wish to meet with Khalid Mishal contradicts all international, Arab, and Israeli resolutions. It also contradicts the position of the U.S. administration.
During his visit, Carter met separately with Peres in Israel and Fayyad in Ramallah. In addition, Carter carried a message to Damascus, and regardless of the content, the message, along with his plan to meet with Hamas leader, is making a dent in the position of the U.S. administration, which is becoming more extreme than its Israeli counterpart.
Another round has been fired in the war of words between Iran and Israel. The deputy commander of the Iranian army said today Israel would be eliminated from the global arena if it attacked Iran. Mohammad Ashtiani said Tehran was not worried by Israeli maneuvers. His comments came ahead of Iran's National Army Day on Thursday. Last week, Infrastructure Minister Benjamin Ben Eliezer warned that any Iranian attack against Israel would lead to the complete destruction of the Iranian nation. Meanwhile, the defense establishment has completed another test of its Arrow anti-missile system without actually firing the rocket itself. A demi-missile was launched as a target from an airplane over the Mediterranean to test the functioning of the Arrow's monitoring system, which tracks enemy rockets. The trial was also a test for the target missile itself, called Blue Anchor, which is meant to simulate a ballistic trajectory of advanced missiles possessed by regional powers. Defense officials are calling the test a total success. Knesset member Ahmed Tibi of the United Arab List met with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, at the Qatar conference in the country's capital, Doha. The two spoke about the Israeli-Palestinian peace process and the status of Israeli Arabs. Tibi sparked controversy when it was reported that he was attending the conference as an official representative of the Palestinian state. Tibi's spokeswoman said that he was invited as the Arab representative of the Knesset and that there was a mistake in the listing on the conference internet site. But Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, Majali Wahabi, is still calling on the Knesset Ethics Committee to punish the MK for appearing as a Palestinian representative. Tibi was also the subject of controversy yesterday when he lashed out at Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni, who is also in Doha. Tibi said the foreign minister's claim that Israel is a democratic state happens to be false. He charged that Israel discriminates against its Arab citizens and carries out apartheid policies in the Palestinian territories. And meanwhile, Foreign Minister Livni met with the management of the Al Jazeera satellite television during her visit to the conference, this to protest their one-sided coverage of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Observers said the meeting was highly sensitive, as one of the owners of the station is the Prime Minister of Qatar. Foreign Ministry officials expressed satisfaction at the network's recent willingness to discuss its coverage of Israel.
Half million Palestinian students in Gaza are facing illiteracy due to the suspension of power supplies. Today, the students left their classes and took to the streets and demanded that the world and Israel lift the blockade imposed on Gaza and resume fuel supplies to the residents. The fuel shortage caused many vehicles, including those used by schools, to stop running. Zuhair Sakala reports from Gaza.
These students are unable to go to school after Israel suspended fuel supplies to the Gaza Strip, which in turn has crippled their means of transportation. With this, the Israeli blockade has put the future of education in Gaza on hold. These students have no choice but to stage protests. Today, they all came out here, including students and teachers.
We don't know what other choices we have. If there's no fuel, we can't go to school.
No one, including the teachers, is able to come from the south. Have mercy over us. Give us our right to an education. We're young children, and we need to look out for our future.
The blockade has reached a critical stage and its outcomes have become horrendous. In addition, the blockade is threatening the future of Gaza for generations to come. Today, all local schools and universities were declared closed in order to allow the students to participate in the protests that were held in front of the United Nations headquarters, hoping their voices would be heard.
The next few days may witness a total collapse of the educational system in the Gaza Strip, especially considering that many students and teachers are not able to reach their schools. However, with the will and greatness of these children, we should be able to overcome these difficulties, God willing.
Although the students in Gaza have many problems in light of the crisis created by the Israeli aggression, they have always been determined to go to school and universities. However, the deteriorating situation in the Gaza Strip caused by the Israeli blockade has prompted the students to take action. However, this suffering is not seen by Israel and its allies as more than a suffering of an individual school or a rundown classroom. Zuhair Sakala, Dubai Television, Gaza.
زهير ساق الله تلفزيون دبي غزة.
To the programme, a military court in Egypt has sentenced 25 members of the banned Muslim Brotherhood to jail terms ranging from 3 to 10 years. 40 members of the organisation were on trial, including some of the Brotherhood's most senior members. 15 of them were acquitted. Outside the military court, there were protests and arrests. Police were reported to have prevented families from getting inside the court to hear the verdicts. Journalists were also arrested. 6 of the Muslim Brotherhood's most senior members were sentenced to 10 years in jail, even though they live outside of the country. When I spoke to Yusuf Nada in Switzerland, who's one of those sentenced in absentia, he was adamant the rulings would not destroy his organisation.
The Muslim Brotherhood worldwide now exceeded 100 million persons. There is no way that it will disappear.
If you
put 20 or 40 or 60 persons in jail that have nothing to do with the Brotherhood, that is a price which we know that we are going to pay, and we are ready to pay.
Well, our correspondent Amr Al-Kaki joins me now and has been following events from Cairo. Amr, you were outside the court when the verdicts were reached. What was the reaction of the people outside waiting to hear what was happening?
Let me start by defining the technicality of outside the court. We were not allowed to stand outside the court immediately, the military camp where the tribunal was held. Neither were the family members of the 40 defendants. We were chased away by police to a 3-kilometer distance where people resorted to a mosque over there and police cordoned them. So outside the court was technically 3 kilometers away at least. And the reaction was absolute sorrow, horror and hysteria upon hearing the verdicts. It was shocking. They did never expect such harsh sentences today, and they were chanting slogans against the government, insisting that this is their country. They will not be deterred with these rulings, and they will never stop bringing in new generations of the group.
What sort of messages is sending out to the Egyptian public that this particular group can be tried and jailed in a military court and not a civilian one?
Actually, it's not the first time that the Brotherhood has been tried before a military tribunal or other organizations, mainly Islamic ones. But according to the Brotherhood members and the family members we spoke to, it says only one thing, that the government has zero tolerance at this particular moment towards the Brotherhood, especially after their victories in the parliamentary elections in 2005, sweeping around 20% of the parliamentarian seats. And of course, this was translated down into trying to ban them from running for the Shura Council elections in 2007, and then just a few days ago being banned from running as candidates in the local elections as well. So it shows they shouldn't be there as a political group. Somehow they are banned by law, and the government will not tolerate them being in the political arena anymore.
What happens now in terms of the future? Obviously, we assume the Muslim Brotherhood will want to appeal, but if their senior membership is in jail and some exiled, where does that leave the group in terms of politics and being involved in Egyptian politics in the future?
Of course, we know from the top leader, Mahdi Akif, and his first deputy, Muhammad Habib, that these trials will not destabilize the group at all, and they insist that they will go all the way doing what they are doing, and they have lately come up with a political manifesto in case they can win an appeal to establish a political party. They define their lines, and they are adamant to go all the way no matter what happens. And we've heard Yusuf Nada, one of the most important leaders in the international group of the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that just before my interview, saying they will go all the way doing what they do, they won't be deterred.
Well, for the moment, Amr Al-Khaki in Cairo, thank you.
أقدمت مجموعة من نزلاء مركز إصلاح وتأهيل الموقر ظهر اليوم.
This afternoon, a group of inmates set fire in one of the cells in the Muwakkar prison reform. 3 inmates died. They were amongst those responsible for starting the fire. Dozens of inmates were injured. According to the official spokesperson for the police department, Major Mohammed Al-Khatib, the fire was contained before spreading to other cells. All of the wounded received the necessary medical treatments.
وتقديم الإسعافات الضرورية لكافة المصابين. وللمزيد من التفاصيل حول الحادث معنا.
Joining us via telephone is His Excellency the Chief of Police, Major General Mazen Turki Al-Qadi. Good evening, Major General Mazen.
مساء الخير.
مساء الخير أهلين.
Good evening.
هل تضعنا في صورة ما حدث؟
Would you please give us a picture of what took place in the Muwakkar Rehabilitation Center?
حقيقة هذا العمل ظهر هذا اليوم حدث.
This afternoon's incident was a result of a protest by some inmates who were being moved from detention centers to penitentiaries for convicts. They were also protesting against the policy of isolating and classifying prisoners, which has been recently implemented by the reform and rehabilitation centers. Isolation and classification is aimed at limiting the entry of prohibited items and preventing wrong practices. Some inmates with priors who refused the policy of reform created some chaos this afternoon, which is clearly against the law and the regulations of prison reform centers. Earlier, the center's administration had tried to negotiate with the inmates and calm them down. But when they set fire in one of the cells, the administration in the Muwakkar had no choice but to call in the anti-riot police and the National Guard. They contained the fire and the inmates who caused the unrest. They also prevented the situation from getting out of hand and protected the other inmates who did not participate in the riot. Some of the inmates in the cell where the fire broke out also panicked and injured themselves. They were all taken to nearby hospitals and were provided with the necessary medical treatment. They were returned to the center after the medics were sure about their health condition. Unfortunately, the fire killed 3 inmates in the cell where it broke out. We brought in the forensic doctor and the civil district attorney, and we formed an investigation committee to examine the reasons behind this incident and to determine the cause of death in the cell where the fire broke out.
نعم. لواء مازن هل سبب الوفاة
So was the cause of death due to the fire that was started by these inmates?
هؤلاء النزلاء؟
نعم حقيقة نتيجة الحريق.
Yes, it was the fire.
وضعنا في عدد
What is the number and the condition of the injured?
حقيقة تم إسعاف عشرات الإصابات بحدود 8.
There were dozens who received medical treatment, about 68 injuries. They had panicked and were taken to nearby hospitals. They were brought back to the Muwakkar because their injuries were minor and did not affect their bodies.
غير مؤثرة في أجسام النزلاء.
نعم. اللواء مازن تركي.
Major General Mazen Turki Al-Qadi, Head of Police, thank you very much.
افتتح معرض لندن الدولي للكتاب اليوم في
The London International Book Affair opened today at Earl's Court in the center of the British capital, London. His Excellency Prince Mohammed ibn Nawaf ibn Abdul Aziz, the Saudi ambassador to the United Kingdom and Ireland, as well as the General Secretary of the Arab League, Amr Musa, attended the event.
بوسط لندن افتتح معرض لندن الدولي للكتاب بمشاركة 20.
At the Earl's Court Exhibition Center in central London, the London Book Fair opened with the participation of 20,000 publishers. The organizers chose to feature the Arab world as the market focus for this year, giving it special importance. The Arab World exhibit received the honored guest in this event with the attendance of the General Secretary of the Arab League, Amr Musa, who cut the ribbon to open the Saudi wing at the request of the Saudi ambassador to the UK and Ireland, His Royal Excellency Prince Mohammed bin Nawaf, which expressed the kingdom's appreciation of its brother Arabs. It was something that met everyone's approval. This is the second year that Saudi Arabia participated in this exhibit to establish itself and its presence, which needs more anchoring.
تشارك فيه المملكة في هذا المعرض لترسخ فيه حضورا يتوق لمزيد من الرسوخ.
The attendance of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia under the direction of His Royal Highness, the Ambassador and the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Khalid, indicates the importance of such participation. It highlights Saudi Arabia's participation in the production of science, academic and research, as well as literature and novels and other books, which are published by local publishing houses as well as government and private ones. No doubt, the participation and the presence of Saudi Arabia here shows the path of education and development in Saudi Arabia, and especially the support of the servant of the two holy sites, as well as the leadership of this country. It demonstrates the importance of culture, understanding, and knowledge to the people of this kingdom.
The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a very large presence as both private and public publishers. The Saudi participation is good and excellent. There are Saudi publishers which are in communication with international publishers in order to obtain translation rights.
The exhibit attracted the attention of visitors, especially since it presented models of the sacred mosque in Mecca and the Prophet's mosque in Medina, and televised images portraying the kingdom's heritage.
I think it is very well set out and informative. Everyone is very friendly and represents Saudi grace and the culture in general.
From the perspective of an educator of students of all grade levels in the Middle East, I appreciate the high education level of this exhibit.
Despite the fact that this is only the second year of participation of Saudi Arabia in the London International Book Fair, it has gained notable attraction from the visitors. It is an attention that is expected to increase in the future with the anchoring of Saudi participation in it. Basio Al-Jabouri, Saudi Arabia TV, London.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.